Thank you for joining us for today's message. We believe we can go anywhere in the world from right here in Lamarque, Texas, and reach people just like you. If you'd like more information about Abundant Life, please visit ALCC.org. You can also text the number below if you would like to support the church financially. Be ready for a powerful message that's going to impact your life.
Matthew 5, and I'm excited about the anniversary month. I like that. I've celebrated a birthday week before, where I've celebrated all week that it was my birthday. And so I figure since we've hit 35 years as a church, let's celebrate for a month. That's even better, right? We're just going to celebrate for however many days there are in March. What, 30, 31? I don't know. However many days there are, we're going to celebrate for them. I'm excited about that. So Matthew chapter 5 this evening. We're going to start in verse 13. Matthew 5 and 13. And it says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot." Then Jesus says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden." Now, I like that. So Jesus is talking, and he's talking to his followers, talking to people that are around, and he says to him, he says, listen, you're the salt of the earth. You're the thing that gives the earth any kind of value, right? And that's really the truth, is that's what God has called us. As believers, we give value to the earth. Anybody ever cook something and put zero seasoning in it and tasted it? It's terrible, right? Like, it doesn't taste good. A little salt goes a long way. Like, we make chocolate chip cookies, and we put salt on top of the cookies. And you would think, like, gross, salt on cookies, right? Like, that's what I always thought. I looked at it, I was like, man, this is the dumbest thing I ever heard. I don't want salt on my cookies. But the second that I did it, it's like they stopped being cookies and they started being crack. You know what I mean? It's like all you could do is eat those cookies. Why? Because there was that salt on them, and it made them so much better. Well, look, that's the way it is with the world. Believers, we are the what? We're the salt of the earth. We're what brings value. We're what makes a bland earth good. Without us, man, this world's in trouble. You got to recognize that. Without believers, without God's people, this world would be in trouble. You think the world's in trouble now. You have no idea what it would be like if you weren't here. You have no idea what your family would be like if you weren't there. You have no idea what your job would be like if you weren't there. Because you're a believer, because you bring what you bring to the table, everything around you changes. And I know sometimes it feels like, man, you're in a dark place. But what does he say? That a light on a hill cannot be hidden. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. We don't know, obviously, a whole lot about hills, unless, like, you know, you're not from here. Where I grew up, we grew up around mountains and hills, and I mean, there's all this stuff. And I was back there a few weeks ago, back in Idaho, and we went up to the mountains. And when you're driving through the mountains, man, it's pitch black dark. When it's dark, it's dark. And it's amazing because you can see where you come up onto a little town or a city that's up on one of the mountainsides. You can see the lights from miles and miles away. And it's true, it says that a city on a hill cannot be hidden. Why? Because it is a light in a dark place. It's a light where there's nothing but darkness. A month or so ago, I was up in my attic, and I was putting in some cabling to run some cameras. So I was in like a weird part of my attic. It kind of goes out and then it goes like under a long way. And I was way back under there, and I'm like laying on my back crawling because it's at the edge of where the roof is. And so it's just a miserable place to be. I don't belong in those kind of places. Like, I'm too big to be in tight quarters. I don't like that. That's why, like, when people have to get under the stage, I'm never the one that gets volunteered because I'm too big for that. I'm like, no, we need a small person that's skinny. So Scotty ends up having to go because Scotty's skinny. And which suits me fine because then I don't have to go. But I was way underneath in a place I shouldn't have been. And my attic light was on. But the attic light is tied to another light switch that's in the house. And Catherine had walked by that light switch and flicked the switch down. And so now I'm not just in a dark place in the attic. I'm in pitch black dark in the attic. I put my hand in front of my face and I couldn't see anything. And I'd left my phone on the other side of where the attic was. So I had to figure out how to crawl back through all the insulation and like crawling from beam to beam. It was the most miserable 30 minutes of my life. What should have taken me 2 minutes cost me 30. And I finally got to my phone and I flipped the flashlight on and everything changed. Right? Because one little light in all that darkness, you can have a mile's worth of darkness, but if you've got an inch worth of light, that darkness doesn't matter anymore. That darkness is irrelevant when you have one little light. One light makes the darkness flee. It doesn't matter how dark it is. It doesn't matter what's going on in your world. It can be pitch black dark, but if you have one light, the smallest light in the middle of the darkness is more than enough. And that's what God has called you to be. God has called you to be what? The light of the world. He has called you to be a light, the smallest light. And you may think, man, my life is insignificant. Who's going to listen to me? What can I do? I think we all probably have those thoughts at one time or another. I know I do. I got those thoughts all the time. Who am I? What can I do? But watch, every person is necessary. Every person is important in God's plan. We might think, man, God doesn't really need me, but you got to understand when you look at a tapestry, from the front it's beautiful, but from behind you've got all these individual threads. And if you start pulling one of those threads out, all of a sudden the whole thing is ruined. Well, that's the same thing with your life. You are an integral part of God's plan, and your light matters. It matters in your family. It matters at your job. It matters in this world. And I love it because as we reflect back on the 35 years that our church has been here, and maybe you've never, maybe you hadn't been here for 30 years. Maybe you've only been here for a year or 6 months or 10 years or whatever the number is. But look, what you get to do is you get to celebrate in the 35. Because it doesn't matter if you've been here for 3 months or 34 years and 364 days. At the end of the day, this is our church together. It's no more their church than it is yours. It's no more mine than it is yours. It's our church. And watch, God has placed this church, these people, this building, this pastor, all of us has been placed together to do what? To be a light in a dark place. This is a place where broken people can come to be put back together. This is a place where lost people can come to be found. This is a place where hurting people can come to be healed. We are a light in a dark place. If you believe it, put your hands together tonight. We are a light. 35 years we've been burning. 35 years we've been burning. And I believe that we're just getting started. I believe the best is yet to come. In John chapter 1 and verse 4, it says, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Look, in Christ was life, and that life was light. It was the light of all mankind. And look, the light that was in Christ is now in you. It's now in me. And together what we do is we are a light in this darkness. No matter how dark it is around you, no matter how terrible it might seem, all you need to do is light. All you need to do is have one spark and your family can change. All you need to do is have one spark and your job can change. Your money can change. Your health can change. Everything can shift if you can be a light. You got to be a light in this world. Because watch, the world is working overtime to do what? To try and snuff your light out. The world is working overtime, so they'll do it with a lot of things. They'll do it with fear. So they're going to try and make you be afraid and too afraid to walk out your door. They're going to make you afraid. They're going to try and discourage you. They're going to try and mock you and humiliate you and laugh at you. They're going to try and tell you that what you believe is not true. Why? Because that's what darkness does. Darkness tries to overcome. Darkness tries to invade. Darkness tries to overtake. But the good news is it doesn't matter how dark it is out there. If you've got one light the darkness must flee. If you can just make one statement, just say, God, I'm here. If you say, I refuse to allow the darkness to overtake me, but I'm going to overtake the darkness, all of a sudden miracles can begin to happen. And watch, you don't need pastor to do a miracle. You don't need me to do a miracle. We don't need to bring Gustavo Paez to do a miracle. You have the ability to be a miracle worker wherever you are. Why? Because the light of life is living on the inside of you. And all of a sudden, you'll show up to places and things will change. You'll walk indoors and the atmosphere will shift. You will speak and people will listen. You will pray and God will answer. Why? Because you are the light of the world. It's living inside of you. God is working inside of you. You're the light. But it's time for us to be the light. Because like I said, it's not always easy. It's not always easy when you're trying to be the light of the world and there's an Amber Alert going off on your cell phone. It's not easy. You're like, oh my God, I wonder what's going on. It's a silver Corolla, 1986, and you're wondering what's happening. But that's what happens is watch, darkness tries, bad things happen. I was sitting up here this morning when Scott and Jude Carricker came up and they were talking, and man, these are some of our best friends. We love Scott and Jude, and we loved David way before we loved y'all. David came into youth church and just immediately got involved, and we were like, man, David, we didn't even know you had parents. And so, but man, I love what Scott was saying, that they had gotten a word, and the word was they were going to have a year of victory. And he stood on that word, and they proclaimed that word. And I love it because he said, we were standing in our house. Our car had just got water over the hood. There was water flowing in our house. And look, darkness was upon us, but we said it's going to be a year of victory. It didn't matter how dark it got. And I was sitting there thinking, man, isn't that the way it works? That you have a promise from God that you're going to have a victory, and what's the devil do? He just tosses darkness in your path. Because watch, just because it was a year of victory didn't mean that it was always going to be victorious. Or let me say that a different way. It didn't mean that it was always going to look victorious. Because so often you're in the middle of the trenches and it looks like you're in a losing battle. But you've got to remember, you must always remember that in the end, we win. No matter what happens, we win. If you're sick, you're going to win one way or the other. You're going to get a miracle, you're going to get a healing, or you're going to go to heaven. Either way, you're going to win. No matter what the outcome, no matter what everybody tells you, we will win. Why? Because we're the light. And light always beats dark. Light always destroys darkness. And I love it because we're not in it day by day by day. We live in the day by day. We live in the moments, but we are in it for the distance. We're in it for a lifetime. And that's where I think sometimes it's easy to get tripped up, because you'll live your life and one day will be rough. I'll be real with you. Yesterday was a rough day in my life. My kids were absolutely crazy yesterday, all day. And it was insane. And I got to the place where I was past my wits' end. Like, I don't know what that means. My wits, whatever they were gone. I didn't have no wits left. And I was just like, man, God, get these kids to go to sleep so I can breathe for a second. I had a good day. It was great. They had fun. They didn't know that I was going crazy, but it was one of those days where I was just like, Jesus, help me. And you know what? I could have just thrown in the towel and said, I'm done being a dad. But watch, I'm not in it for the day. I'm in it for a lifetime. So one bad day, and it wasn't even that bad of a day, one day doesn't determine whether I love my kids or not. One action, one moment, one day of my life doesn't determine if I'm going to serve God or not. What do? I made a decision. I'm serving God for a lifetime, for an eternity. And so one day doesn't matter, because I understand that today might not be great, but tomorrow has an opportunity to be better. And the next day will be better, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. And I live my life believing that the best is yet to come. I don't think that the best is behind me. I don't think the best is now. No matter how good it is now, something better is on the horizon. I believe that God can always do more. Why? Because that's the God we serve. We serve the God who says no matter what, something great can happen, something good. And so what do? We live every day, but we trust that God has our best interest at heart. In order to be the light of the world, in order to have that overcome and consume who we are so that we can change the world around us, we've got to learn a statement. I believe this is a statement that all of us should learn and all of us should really practice. We should practice the statement that says, God says, I am blank. God says, I am blank. Whatever you want to fit in that blank is that's on you. That's your business. Because watch, we oftentimes listen to what people say. People say, I am whatever. People say I am worthless. People say I'm no good. People say I'm terrible. People say I'm miserable. People say I'm ugly. People say I'm stupid. People say, look, I don't care what people say. I don't care what your parents say. I don't care what your children say. I don't care what your coworkers say. I don't care what your husband says. I don't care what your wife says. I don't care what any of them say, because at the end of the day, their opinion of you doesn't matter. All that matters is God says I am whatever. God says I am righteous. God says I am his masterpiece. God says I am his workmanship. God says I am established. God says I am sealed with his promise. God says I am redeemed. God says I am delivered. God says I am qualified. God says I am loved. God says I am more than enough. God says I'm more than a conqueror. God says I'm the head and not the tail. I'm above and not beneath. God says no weapon formed against me will prosper. I don't care what they say. You got to start talking about what God says. You got to start talking about what God says. God says, I am, you fill in the blank. Because at the end of the day, people are going to leave. The friends, look, how many of y'all have friends in high school? All of us, right? Except those that didn't raise their hand, I'm sorry. We all had friends in high school. I'm going to ask this. Anybody ever say to your friends in high school, we're going to be friends forever? You still friends with them? I mean, maybe one. Maybe. Maybe a couple of people. Maybe. I'll go one farther. Y'all ever had a girlfriend in high school or junior high? You said you're like, oh my God, we're going to get married. We're going to have kids. Did you marry that girl? Nah. I mean, maybe. 1 out of 100. Maybe. But look, we all said it. We say, oh, we're going to be friends forever. We're going to do life together forever. How many people I talked to from high school? 0, not one. Not because they're bad people. It's where we got nothing in common anymore. We were friends because of geography. That's it. Because we were in the same place at the same time. If I'd have been a year older, wouldn't have been my friend. If I'd have been 2 years younger, wouldn't have been my friend. Nothing bad with them. They're good people. But watch. We put so much value on what a coworker thinks about us. Man, that coworker's one stupid mistake away from getting fired. And you'll never see him again. But you care what they think about you? You care what they say about you? Man, I fall in that trap. I care what the person sitting next to me on the airplane thinks. So I'm sitting next to somebody, I'm like, man, I don't want to think I'm a weirdo. Like, you know? Caring about, I was thinking the other day, I'm never going to see that person again for the rest of my life. I don't care what they think no more. Get out of here. I don't care what you say. You can think I'm a weirdo. That's great. That's fine. Everybody agrees with you. But watch, when we start valuing what other people say and stop remembering what God says. You want to be victorious? You want to be the light of the world? You want to do great things for God? Then start talking about you the way God talks about you. Because it's easy to listen to what people say and then start repeating it. But watch, God says that you're so much better than you think you are. Why? Because you've got potential living on the inside of you. I use my kids all the time as examples because I know my kids. And it's funny because my kids aren't really good at anything. Let me qualify that. My kids are good at a lot of things, like for kids. But they're not as good as I am. right? Like, my kid can hit a baseball off a tee, but nowhere near as good as I can. And you're like, well, of course not, because he's a kid. Well, exactly. But here's the deal. I see the potential on the inside of him. I see the potential to be able to count. My kids can count to 10. I can count to 1,000,000. You're like, well, yeah, they're kids, yeah. But guess what? They've got the potential to be even better than me. So I see not what they can do, but I see what they're capable of. And so what do? As parents, we draw that potential out by telling our children, hey, you can do more. You can do better. You're better than this. You're greater than this. You're going to be awesome. You're going to be such a great kid. You're going to do so many great things. That's how parents talk to their children. Well, guess what? That's how God talks to you. But when you are standing there saying, I'm not any good, I'm worthless, because Joe Blow down the street tells you you're no good, and God, who is the creator of heaven and earth, who loves you, who adores you, who shaped you out of the ground and breathed life on the inside of you, but Joe's words are valued more than God's words. But God says you're awesome, and I love you, and you're going to do great things, and you're going to do amazing things, and you're loved, and you're redeemed, and you're sanctified. And all of a sudden, when we start listening to what God says I am, man, you can do anything. There is nothing impossible for you when you believe that. But the thing is it's so much easier for us. At least I'm going to talk about myself. It's so much easier for me sometimes to believe what God says about himself. It's easier for me to believe that than it is to believe what he says about me. So when Jesus says, I am the light of the world, I'm like, well, yeah, of course, that's easy. But watch, then he flips it, and he says, you are the light of the world. And I'm like, man, it was easy for me to believe that God is the light of the world, but when I got to believe that I'm the light of the world. Why? Because there's still some darkness in me. I know there's no darkness in him, but I still got some problems. I still got some issues. I still get angry sometimes. I still want to yell at people sometimes, and I still want to, I got issues, same as you. And so I think, man, how can I be the light of the world when God was perfect, but he's telling me I can be like him? So what do? We've got to begin to listen to what he says. The same Jesus that said, I am the light of the world, told you that you are the light of the world. He told you the same things he did, you can do, and even greater, the Bible says. You have the ability to be so much better. Our problem is we take baggage. We carry baggage with us. We carry yesterday's thoughts and memories and issues, and we're constantly reminded of this by that voice in the back of our head telling us, man, I remember when you messed up. Do you remember when you were supposed to be the light of the world, but you were saying those words that you shouldn't be saying? You may have drank some stuff you shouldn't have drank. You may have smoked some stuff you shouldn't have smoked. You came out of the bathroom and your nose had a bunch of white all around it, and you're supposed to be the light of the world. Like, what happens, the back of our mind begins to remind us of all the times we messed up. But you know what God says? God says, you're the light of the world. He said, I don't care where you've been. I don't care what you've done. I don't care the issues you've got. He says, because I see greatness inside of you. You see, the more that you rehearse that, the more that you talk about how great you are in God's eyes. Not that when he calls you blameless, he's making a mistake. Not because when he calls you powerful, he's making a mistake. Not because when he calls you amazing, he's making a mistake. But when you rehearse those words and say, you know what, God, you did say that I'm more than a conqueror. You did say that I'm above and not beneath. You did say that I can be great. You did say that I'm blessed. You did say that I'm healed. When you start saying those things, all of a sudden, you will become more like him. I saw a commercial the other day for cell phones, and I love it because it was showing people taking these amazing photos with their cell phone. And I'm like, man, I don't know how, people are so creative. Like, I feel like I'm the least creative person in the world. I just like point and shoot. Like I'm clicking. But there's people that like get down on the ground and like zoom and do all kinds of stuff. And it just amazes me. But the cell phone company said in their commercial, it says, it's what you do with what we do. And I like that because all they do is build technology. All they do is make this little machine that you point a button and it takes a picture. But watch, that machine is worthless unless it gets in the hands of somebody that puts it to use. And look, that's what God has done with your life. God said, listen, it's what you do with what I do. God says, I give you life. I give you potential. I give you promises. I give you potential to do great things. He says, but it's what you do with it that's going to determine where you go, because God's not going to force you into anything, but he's put the power on the inside of you to do greater things than you ever imagined. He's put it on the inside of you, and it's what you do with what he does that makes you so great. You see, it's in our weakness that God has given strength. It's when we can't do it anymore. It's when we get to the place we just throw our hands up and say, God, I quit. I can't do this anymore. I need your help. I say that about my kids. Maverick was trying to get to a light switch the other day. He wanted some juice out of the pantry, and I was sitting on the couch, and I was like, well, just go in there. He's like, yeah, but it's dark. I was like, it's 4 feet to the drawer. You know where the drawer is. Just the door's open. Go in there. And he's like, yeah, it's dark. I said, well, go to the light switch. I'm trying to figure out any way that I don't have to get up and go and flip the light on. He was like, no. He said, help me, help me. So he grabbed my hand and pulled me up, and we walk over there. And I was like, well, flip the light switch. And he's jumping, trying to get the light switch, and he's not anywhere close to it. And I was like, well, maybe get it. He said, I'm too small. I'm too small. Help me. I'm too small. So I pick him up, and he flips the light switch and grabs his juice, and life is good at that point. But I love that because, watch, he wouldn't quit. He wouldn't give up until he got me where he wanted me, until I helped him do what he couldn't do. And watch, when you are praying, when you say, God, I'm not going to quit praying about this until you answer my prayer, what are you doing? You're grabbing God by the hand, and you're saying, God, I'm not letting go until I get the answer that I came for. In Mark 5, there was a woman with the issue of blood, and she came to God, and she grabbed a hold of his garment and said, I'm not letting go until I get a miracle. And look, that's the kind of faith God demands for us to have. He said, I want you to have the kind of faith that holds on and says, God, I'm too small. I need you to help me. I know what I want. I know where it is, but I can't do it alone. So God, unless you partner with me, we're in trouble. God is begging you to do that. God isn't like me sitting on the couch. God is standing there waiting for you to say, I'm too small. He's waiting on you to do something. It's where God uses the least likely. He uses the weakest, the foolish things of this world to do great things. Our strength is being weak. Our strength is in our weakness. Now, look, that doesn't mean you just got to be a weak person, a weak Christian. No, weakness, what I'm talking about, is not being able to do it by yourself. That's when you're the strongest, is when you say, God, I can't do this alone. I have to have you. And then God, he comes to help. That's the power of the God that we serve. And you see, that's what's so great about when God partners you with a church. Because what are we talking about? The whole concept of this night is that we are the salt of the earth. We are the light of the world. And right, when we get together, God partners us together to do great things, right? And so what happens is we when we come together to church, and again, I know this is a Sunday night, so y'all are like the super people, but here's the deal. When God partners us together, we're greater together than we are apart, right? That makes sense. I'm going to ask, Sergio's the only one walking, so that's good. So I want everybody to just stay seated for a second. Guys, I want them to flip the lights off. They're going to turn all the lights off real quick. One second. All right, so it's pretty dark, right? Now watch, I can stand here like this. I got a flashlight on my phone. And I can stand here, and it's okay. Anybody else got a cell phone tonight that's got a flashlight? If you got a cell phone, get your cell phone out and flip your light on real quick. Just humor me for a second. If you got a cell phone with a flashlight, go ahead and pull it out. I'm going to wait for you, because this should be like just about all of us. Unless you're my parents, they have them, they just don't take them nowhere. I'm like, what's the point of having a cell phone if you leave it at the house? They're like, well, we don't have a house phone. I was like, yeah, but it doesn't mean you leave your cell phone at home. What's wrong with you? Look around. When I was holding up my light, it was okay. But now look at how much brighter it is in here. Look at this. We can almost not even need the lights. Why? Because together we can do more things. Together we are greater. Together we can light up dark places. Why? That's why God called us to this place. That's why God put you in a church like this. Why? So that you could hold your light up and you could say, man, I'm not in this alone. Look around. Look at all these other lights. We're doing this together. That's what's so great about what we've got going on, is that together we are stronger. Together we're more powerful. Together we are better than any of us are apart. And together, you know what I love about this is it's dark. And you can look around and you don't see white people or black people or Hispanic people or Indian people. All you see is light. All you see is light. And that's all you need to see. And that's why church is so amazing. That's why a church like this is so amazing, because it's all of us together. We don't care about if you're rich or poor. We don't care if you got a nice car or a good house or money in the bank. We don't care about the color of your skin or your socioeconomic position. We don't care about that stuff. All we care about is, do you have a light? Because if you do, oh, you can do anything. You are unstoppable in this world if you just have a light. How are you going to flip those lights back on? And you can kill your flashlight so you don't burn your battery. But watch, we are the light. And as you begin to make those statements about who God says you are, as you continue to make those statements, and you stop talking about what other people say, stop talking about what your past says, stop talking about all the issues in your world, but you start saying, God says, I am. What you're doing is you are confirming His calling on your life, and what it does is it affirms your identity in Him. It affirms who you are, and it begins to build the confidence up. And watch, when you start making those statements that says, I am better, I am good enough, all of a sudden your light begins to shine and it lights up in this world. Watch, you don't always feel like it. Because there are moments in your world where you say, you know what? I don't like myself very much at this moment. I don't know if you've ever had those kind of moments where you're like, man, I don't even like myself right now. But I am loved. You say, man, I don't feel like I'm gaining much ground right now, but I am more than a conqueror. You say, man, I feel like I don't have any confidence in myself right now. I just don't know what to do, but I am strong and very courageous. You say, I don't know how to fix this area in my life right now, but I am healed and I am made whole. I don't know how long I'm going to be continuing to deal with this issue of sin in my world, but I am free and forgiven. Watch, you can make those statements and those thoughts are always going to come. Negative thoughts are always going to come. They're always going to show up. That's just the way your mind works. It's impossible not to think negative sometimes. Impossible. They'll always come up. But you have the ability. That's why God made us the way we are. We are so smart that when a thought comes in that's contrary to what you want to think, you have the ability to stop thinking about that thought. You can counter those thoughts in your mind. And you have that ability to say, no, I don't care what it sounds like. I don't care what it says. I'm going to say something different. I'm going to say something different. And as soon as you do, all of a sudden, boom, your light turns on. And people get around you and they're like, man, if I was in your position, I don't know how I'd even make it anymore. And you're like, yeah, I know you might not be able to make it, but I can. Why? Because God says I can. You say, man, I don't even know how you're doing this with your marriage like that. Yeah, I don't know either, but God says that I'm restored. God says I'm going to have something good happen. God says I'm blessed. All of a sudden, you begin to speak the way God speaks, and it proves in your inability that His ability is made strong. In our unknowns, that's when God's plan comes to pass. 18 years ago in August, I moved across the country. I came from a little town called Eden, Idaho, that nobody has ever heard of. Unless you've been there, you ain't ever heard of it. Eden, Idaho, 324 people in my town. Highest number of graduates ever in a high school class. Of my class had 62 kids. 58 of them were Mormons. I was one of the 4 that wasn't. My town is super small. And 18 years ago, I had a call in my life to go to Bible school. And I was looking at 3 different schools. I'll tell you real quick, 3 different schools. Jerry Savelle, I don't know, many of y'all are probably familiar with Jerry Savelle. He had a school up in Fort Worth. Pastor Hallam, of course, we had Abundant Life School of Ministry here at the church that we're about to start up probably this fall. And then Rhema Bible College up in Tulsa was one that I was looking at. And at the time I had long hair, and not like super long, but like long. And Rhema said that I had to cut my hair to go to school, and so I crossed them off the list. I was like, if Samson can't go to your school, I can't either. I'm sorry. There wasn't nothing about that in the student handbook here, so I figured I'd be all right. And then Galveston had waves, kind of. And so I figured I could come here and surf and go to Bible school. And that was how I made my choice. And so 18 years ago, I came to school here. And I deferred enrollment to a really good college that was giving me a lot of money to play football and run track. And 18 years ago, I walked in this door and sat in that chair right there, second chair right there. And man, I just felt like God was calling me to something more. And I felt like 18 years ago that God was calling me to light my light and put it with His light. And at that time, I didn't know that we were going to ever be family. I had no intention of that. I was going to come here for 1 year and then go back to college. But I felt like God said, I want you to use your light and make it like His light. And then all of a sudden, there were other people. They said, man, I'm doing that too, and I'm doing that too. And for 35 years, men and women just like you, you've put your light with our light. And all of us together, man, I love it because all of us together are so much greater than any of us apart. And that's what God's called us to. That's what I love about celebrating. The past is great, but man, I can't wait till the future. Why? Because you're here. Rudy, you guys are here. You weren't here 35 years ago, but you're here now. Darian, Maria, you guys weren't here 35 years ago, but you're here now. I'm here now. Gardy's here now. You guys are here now. You're here now. Scott and Jude, you're here now. This is the moment. This is the time that God has called us to. Valita, you're here now. Man, that's what's so great about this. That God has put all of us here, watch this, on purpose. Chip, Jennifer, you're here on purpose. Buddy, you guys are here, Susan, on purpose. God has called us, what? To hook our lights together. Because when we light, all of us together, darkness doesn't stand a chance. And so I say today, I want you just, and I'm not calling new members or nothing like that. I'm just saying, I want you to just purpose in yourself, purpose in your heart. I want you to purpose that you are going to be that light. Not just in the church, because, I mean, again, it's so easy to serve God in here. It's easy to serve God in the church. I can be a light in this place, and it's great, but it's when you're out in the darkness.
To learn more, visit walterhallam.net. Here you'll find a list of resources to help you with your daily walk in Christ.